и свободу до конца. Офицеры, россияне, пусть свобода вас сияет, заставляя в унисон звучать сердца. Офицеры, ваше сердце под прицелом, за Россию и свободу до конца. Офицеры, россияне, пусть свобода вас сияет, заставляя в унисон звучать сердца. Спасибо! Снова Родина нас позвала. За справедливость, за Россию! Мы вместе! Украина и Крым, Беларусь и Молдова — это моя страна. Сахалин и Камчатка, Уральские горы — это моя страна. Краснодарский край, Сибирь и Поволжье, Казахстан и Кавказ и Прибалтика тоже. Я рожден в Советском Союзе, сделан я в СССР. Я рожден в Советском Союзе, сделан я в СССР. Рюрики, Романовы, Ленин и Сталин — это моя страна. Пушкин, Есенин, Высоцкий, Гагарин — это моя страна. Разоренные церкви и новые храмы, и Красная площадь, и стройка на Баме. Я рожден в Советском Союзе, сделан я в СССР. О, я рожден в Советском Союзе, сделан я в СССР. Олимпийское золото, старты победы — это моя страна. Жуков, Суворов, комбайны, торпеды — это моя страна. Олигархи и нищие, мощь и разруха, КГБ, МВД и большая наука. Я рожден в Советском Союзе, сделан я в СССР. О, я рожден в Советском Союзе, сделан я в СССР. Глинка, Толстой, Достоевский, Чайковский, Врубель, Шаляпин, Шагал, Айвазовский, нефть и алмазы, золото, газ, флот, ВДВ, ВВС и спецназ, водка, икра, Эрмитаж и ракеты, самые красивые женщины планеты, шахматы, опера, лучший балет. Скажите, где есть то, чего у нас нет? Даже Европа объединила союз. Вместе наши предки сражались в бою, вместе выиграна Вторая мировая война. Вместе мы самая большая страна. Тут границы, без визы нельзя. Как вам без нас? Отзовитесь, друзья. Я рожден СССР. Я рожден в Советском Союзе, сделан я в СССР. Спасибо! Спасибо! Россия!
Олег Газманов, спасибо!
Герои прошлого, герои наших дней, пример служения народу и отчизне. И мы гордимся Родиной своей, историей и всею вашей жизнью.
Друзья, вам посвящает свое выступление народный артист нашей большой страны Николай Расторгуев и группа «Любэ».
Затянуто, нервы гитарной струною натянуты. Дождь барабанит с утра и до вечера. Время застывшее кажется вечностью. Мы наступаем по всем направлениям. Танки, пехота, огонь артиллерии. Нас убивают, но мы выживаем. И снова в атаку себя мы бросаем. Давай зажги, давай, брат, до конца. Тех, кто с нами был тогда, давай зажги, будь проклята война. Помянем тех, кто с нами был тогда. Небо над нами свинцовыми тучами стелется низко туманами рваными. Хочется верить, что все уже кончилось, только бы выжил товарищ мой раненый. Ты потерпи, браток, не умирай пока. Будешь ты жить еще долго и счастливо. Будем на свадьбе твоим отплясывать. Будешь ты в небо не тише подбрасывать. Давай зажги, держись, брат, до конца. Давай за тех, кто дома ждет тебя. Давай зажги, будь проклята война. Давай за тех, кто дома ждет. Давай за них, давай за нас. И за Сибирь, и за Кавказ. За свет далеких городов. И за друзей, и за любовь. Давай за вас, давай за нас. И за десант, и за спецназ. За боевые ордена. Давай поднимем старина. В старом альбоме нашел фотографии деда. Он был командир Красной Армии, сыну на память. Берлин 45-го века ушедшего воспоминания. Запах травы на рассвете нескошенной. Стоны земли от бомбежек распаханной. Пара солдатских ботинок истоптанных. Войнами новыми, войнами старыми. Давай зажги.
За нами Россия, за нами Москва, за президента, за мир без нацизма.
А на войне, как на войне, патроны, водка, махорка в цене. А на войне нелегкий труд, а сам стреляй, а то убьют. А на войне, как на войне, подруга, вспомни обо мне. А на войне не ровен час, а может мы, а может нас. Комбат, батяня, комбат, ты сердце не прятал за спины ребят. Летят самолеты и танки горят. Так бьет ее комбат, комбат, батяня, комбат. За нами Россия, Москва и Арбат. Огонь батарея, огонь батальон. Комбат ее командует он. Огонь батарея, огонь батальон. Огонь батарея, огонь батальон. Огонь батарея, огонь батальон. Огонь батарея, огонь, 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 агония. А на войне, как на войне, солдаты видят мамку во сне. А на войне, да то оно, а все серьезнее, чем в кино. Да война, 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 дурная тетка стерва она. Эх, война, война идет, а пацана девчонка ждет. Комбат, батяня, комбат, ты сердце не прятал за спины ребят. Летят самолеты и танки горят. Так бьет ее комбат, комбат, батяня, комбат. За нами Россия, Москва и Арбат. Огонь батарея, огонь батальон. Комбат ее командует он. Комбат, батяня, комбат. Ты сердце не прятал за спины ребят. Летят самолеты и танки горят. Так бьет ее комбат, комбат, батяня, комбат. За нами Россия, Москва и Арбат. Огонь батарея, огонь батальон. Комбат ее командует он. Огонь батарея, огонь батальон. Огонь батарея, огонь батальон. Огонь батарея, огонь батальон. Огонь батарея, огонь, 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 я. А на войне, как на войне, на войне, как на войне, на войне, как на войне, на войне, как на войне.
Мы огромная страна, которая сильна своим единством. Мы непобедимы. И тот народ, который верит своему президенту, его не сломить. За Россию! За победу! За президента!
Встречайте! Президент Российской Федерации Владимир Владимирович Путин!
Мы, многонациональный народ Российской Федерации, объединенные общей судьбой, на своей земле,
устала, я люблю тебе жизнь и хочу, чтобы лучше ты стала. Мне немало дано, ширь земли и равнина морская. Мне известно давно бескорыстная дружба мужская. Звони каждого дня, как я счастлив, что нет мне покоя. Есть любовь у меня, жизнь, ты знаешь, что это такое. Есть любовь у меня, жизнь, ты знаешь, что это такое. Как поют соловьи, полумрак поцелуй на рассвете, и вершина любви — это чудо великое, дети. Вновь мы с ними пройдем детство, юность, вокзалы, причалы. Будут внуки, потом все опять повторится сначала. Ах, как годы летят, мы грустим, седину замечая. Жизнь, ты помнишь, солдат, что погибли, тебя защищая. Так ликуй и вершись в трудных звуках весеннего гимна. Я люблю тебе жизнь и надеюсь, что это взаимно. Ликуй и вершись в трудных звуках весеннего гимна. Я люблю тебе жизнь и надеюсь, что это взаимно.
Василий Гирелла, Лужники, Москва!
За жизнь, за нашу Родину! Ура!
Россия! 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 Все вместе! Россия! Россия! Молодцы, друзья! Какие же вы молодцы! Мы отрицаем национализм, который граничит с нацизмом, как идеологию. Мы против любого стравливания народов. В нашей стране проживают почти 200 национальностей, и все они, конечно, имеют равные права. Главное для нас, что мы граждане одной страны, мы россияне.
И сейчас сюда выйдет настоящая интербригада, российская интернациональная бригада. Дипломат, директор Департамента информации и печати Министерства иностранных дел России, официальный представитель МИДа России Мария Захарова.
Главный редактор телеканала «Арти», Международного информационного агентства России сегодня, информационного агентства «Спутник» Маргарита Симоньян.
Российская журналистка, телеведущая, продюсер, общественный деятель Тина Канделаки.
Меня часто спрашивают, скажите, а что же это за ценности такие, которые отстаивает ваша страна, ваша Россия? страна и народ, который...
Вернулся в Россию Крым. Крым вернулся домой. И мы говорили о том, что началась русская весна. Год назад в Донецке я и мои коллеги уже говорили о том, что весна не может длиться вечно. Когда-то должно наступить лето. И тогда же там я сказала: «Россия, матушка, забери Донбасс домой». Теперь за одну эту фразу европейская свободолюбивая Украина возбудила против меня уголовное дело, свободная Европа ввела все санкции. Моим детям маленьким, всем родным, близким звонят, угрожают каждые 5 минут, грозят расправой за право говорить вот эту правду. И именно поэтому я хочу повторить: Россия, матушка, забери Донбасс домой. Россия, матушка, защити своих детей. Россия, матушка, накажи всех тех, кто разорвал на куски горловскую Мадонну с ее 10-месячной дочерью, кто бомбил кассетными бомбами детский пляж в Зугрессе, кто прямо сейчас бомбит Донецк, Мелитополь, Мариуполь, кто глумился и потешался над горящими людьми в Одессе. За наших ребят, которые сейчас сражаются с этой нечистью, за сбережение жизней мирных людей, за нашу Россию. За нас, ребята.
Здравствуйте, говорю я всем жителям нашей необъятной страны. Я Тина Канделаки. Я родилась в Грузии. Наверное, я одна из немногих, кто в 95-м году осознанно выбрал Россию. Моя родина с 95-го года Россия. Моя родина по-прежнему Грузия. И вы знаете, нас, людей, говорящих на разных языках, живущих в России, всегда объединяло то, что Россия нас принимала, любила, давала возможность добиваться всех целей, поставленных в собственной жизни, и никогда не запрещала, не выжимала, не выдавливала нашу культуру из себя. Знаете, когда ты приезжаешь за границу, ты видишь, как иностранцы очень интересно реагируют на нас. Будь то грузин, армянин, башкир, татарин, чеченец. Если ты говоришь на русском, то они тебя воспринимают как русского. Они говорят: ты русский. И мы говорим: да, мы с гордостью носим это звание русского человека, несмотря на все сложности и трудности, через которые нам сейчас приходится проходить. Сейчас происходит самый большой эксперимент в истории человечества. Такого еще никогда не было, когда целую нацию пытаются стереть как аккаунт в соцсетях. Такого никогда не было. И это делается по одной простой причине, если ты говоришь по-русски. Нас попытались лишить флага и гимна.
И мы видим, как героически действуют и воюют наши ребята в ходе этой операции. Эти слова из священного писания христианства, из того, что дорого тем, кто исповедует эту религию. Но все заключается в том, что это универсальная ценность для всех народов и представителей всех конфессий России. И именно для нашего народа, в первую очередь для нашего народа. И лучшим подтверждением тому является то, как воюют, как действуют наши ребята в ходе этой военной операции. Плечо к плечом. Помогают, поддерживают друг друга. А если надо, то как родного брата прикрывают своим телом от пули на поле боя. Такого единения у нас давно не было. Так получилось, что начало операции совпало, совершенно случайно совпало с днем рождения одного из наших выдающихся военно...
Вперед, Россия! Вперед, Россия! Вперед, Россия! Вперед, Россия! Вперед, Россия! Вперед, Россия! В этом слове источник силы. Повторяем: вперед, Россия! Россия, Россия! В этом слове огонь и сила. В этом слове победа.
За Россию! За победу! За президента!
Встречайте! Президент Российской Федерации Владимир Владимирович Путин!
Мы, многонациональный народ Российской Федерации, объединенные общей судьбой, на своей земле. Это первые строчки основного закона России, Конституции. И каждое слово наполнено глубоким смыслом, имеет огромное значение. На своей земле, объединенные общей судьбой. Так наверняка думали, и этим руководствовались люди, когда шли на референдум в Крыму и Севастополе 18 марта 2014 года. Они жили и живут на своей земле и хотели жить общей судьбой со своей исторической родиной, с Россией. Они имели на это полное право и достигли своей цели. Поздравим прежде всего их с праздником. Это их праздник. Поздравляем! За это время Россия немало сделала для того, чтобы поднять Крым и Севастополь. Нужно было сделать вещи, которые не видны сразу невооруженным взглядом. Они носят фундаментальный характер. Газоснабжение, энергоснабжение, коммуналка, восстановление дорожной сети, строительство новых дорог, магистралей и новых мостовых переходов. Нужно было вытащить Крым из той унизительной позиции, из того унизительного состояния, в которой Крым и Севастополь были погружены, когда находились в составе другого государства, и которое финансировало эти территории по так называемому остаточному принципу. Но дело не только в этом. Дело в том, что мы знаем, что надо делать дальше, как надо делать дальше, за счет чего. И мы обязательно реализуем все намеченные планы. Но дело не только в этих решениях. Дело в том, что крымчане и севастопольцы поступили правильно, когда поставили жесткий барьер на пути неонацистам и крайним националистам. Потому что то, что происходило на других территориях и происходит до сих пор, лучшее тому подтверждение. Люди, которые проживали и проживают на Донбассе, также не согласились с этим государственным переворотом. Против них тут же были организованы карательные военные операции. И не одна. Их тут же погрузили в блокаду, подвергли систематическим обстрелам из пушек, наносили удары авиации. Вот это все и есть то, что называется геноцид. Именно избавить людей от этих страданий, от этого геноцида является основной, главной причиной, побудительным мотивом и целью военной операции, которую мы начали на Донбассе и на Украине. Именно в этом цель. И здесь, вы знаете, мне приходят в голову слова из Священного Писания. Нет больше любви, как если бы кто-то отдал душу свою за друзей своих. И мы видим, как героически действуют и воюют наши ребята в ходе этой операции. Эти слова из священного писания христианства, из того, что дорого тем, кто исповедует эту религию. Но все заключается в том, что это универсальная ценность для всех народов и представителей всех конфессий России. И именно для нашего народа, в первую очередь для нашего народа. И лучшим подтверждением тому является то, как воюют, как действуют наши ребята в ходе этой военной операции. Плечо к плечу. Помогают, поддерживают друг друга. А если надо, то как родного брата прикрывают своим телом от пули на поле боя. Такого единения у нас давно не было. Так получилось, что начало операции совпало, совершенно случайно совпало с днем рождения одного из наших выдающихся военачальников, причисленных к лику святых, Федора Ушакова, который за всю свою блестящую военную карьеру не проиграл ни одного сражения. Он как-то сказал, что грозы сии пойдут во славу России. Так было тогда, так сегодня и так будет всегда. Спасибо!
За Россию! За победу! За президента!
Встречайте! Президент Российской Федерации Владимир
наверняка думали, и этим руководствовались люди, когда шли на референдум в Крыму и Севастополе 18 марта 2014 года. Они жили и живут на своей земле и хотели жить общей судьбой со своей исторической родиной, с Россией. Они имели на это полное право и достигли своей цели. Поздравим прежде всего их с праздником. Это их праздник. Поздравляем! За это время Россия немало сделала для того, чтобы поднять Крым и Севастополь. Нужно было сделать вещи, которые не видны сразу невооруженным взглядом. Они носят фундаментальный характер. Газоснабжение, энергоснабжение, коммуналка, восстановление дорожной сети, строительство новых дорог, магистралей и новых мостовых переходов. Нужно было вытащить Крым из той унизительной позиции, из того унизительного состояния, в который Крым и Севастополь были погружены, когда находились в составе другого государства, и которое финансировало эти территории по так называемому остаточному принципу. Но дело не только в этом. Дело в том, что мы знаем, что надо делать дальше, как надо делать дальше, за счет чего. И мы обязательно реализуем все намеченные планы. Но дело не только в этих решениях. Дело в том, что крымчане и севастопольцы поступили правильно, когда поставили жесткий барьер на пути неонацистам и крайним националистам. Потому что то, что происходило на других территориях и происходит до сих пор, лучшее тому подтверждение. Люди, которые проживали и проживают на Донбассе, также не согласились с этим государственным переворотом. Против них тут же были организованы карательные военные операции. И не одна. Их тут же погрузили в блокаду, подвергли систематическим обстрелам из пушек, наносили удары авиации. Вот это все и есть то, что называется геноцид. Именно избавить людей от этих страданий, от этого геноцида является основной, главной причиной, побудительным мотивом и целью военной операции, которую мы начали на Донбассе и на Украине. Именно в этом цель. И здесь, вы знаете, мне приходят в голову слова из Священного Писания. Нет больше любви, как если бы кто-то отдал душу свою за друзей своих. И мы видим, как героически действуют и воюют наши ребята в ходе этой операции. Эти слова из Священного Писания христианства, из того, что дорого тем, кто исповедует эту религию. Но все заключается в том, что это универсальная ценность для всех народов и представителей всех конфессий России. И именно для нашего народа, в первую очередь для нашего народа. И лучшим подтверждением тому является то, как воюют, как действуют наши ребята в ходе этой военной операции. Плечо к плечу. Помогают, поддерживают друг друга. А если надо, то как родного брата прикрывают своим телом от пули на поле боя. Такого единения у нас давно не было. Так получилось, что начало операции совпало, совершенно случайно совпало с днем рождения одного из наших выдающихся военачальников, причисленных к лику святых, Федора Ушакова, который за всю свою блестящую военную карьеру не проиграл ни одного сражения. Он как-то сказал, что грозы сии пойдут во славу России. Так было тогда, так сегодня и так будет всегда. Спасибо!
in the history of the United States, grossly disproportionately borne by black Americans, driven by rhetoric about defunding police. We could prioritize that. That wouldn't be avoidance. And yet we do not. Because indeed we are in the minority. And the priorities are being set not by the minority but the majority. I yield back.
Gentleman from Ohio. Reserves. Gentleman from New York is recognized.
Madam Speaker, I now yield 2 minutes to the distinguished gentleman from Texas, Mr. Green.
Gentleman from Texas is recognized for 2 minutes.
And still I rise, Madam Speaker. And I rise today reminded that Dr. King addressed this very issue decades ago. He addressed it when he shared his poem with us. Fleecy locks and black complexion cannot forfeit nature's claim. Though skin may differ, affection dwells in black and white the same. And were I so tall as to reach the pole or to grasp the ocean at a span, I must be measured by my soul, because the mind is the standard of the man and woman. I have lived long enough now at 74 years to have seen a time when black people would bleach their skin. The product was called Bleach and Glow, so that they could be as white as they could get. I've lived long enough to see them process their hair so that they could make it as straight as they could get it. I've lived long enough now, however, to see black people having decided that they're going to be themselves, they're going to wear their hair as they choose, and they're not going to allow themselves to be discriminated against it because of it. I've lived long enough now to understand that it's not the color of skin or the texture of hair. It's the character within that determines the worth of men and women. I've lived long enough to understand that black people are American people too. And when you say the American people don't want it, you cannot exclude black people. Black people would have this be on the floor. This is a kitchen table issue in black households. Because when Johnny comes home and he's been fired because of his hair, that's a kitchen table issue. That's unemployment. That impacts unemployment. So we have a duty and obligation to do what we're doing, and I will yield back the balance of my time with the understanding that we're going to be ourselves.
Gentleman from New York, reserves.
Reserve.
Gentleman from Ohio is recognized.
We reserve, Madam Speaker.
Gentleman from Ohio reserves. Gentleman from New York is recognized.
Madam Speaker, I now yield 2 minutes to the gentlelady from Massachusetts, Ms. Presley.
Gentlelady from Massachusetts is recognized for 2 minutes.
Thank you to my distinguished colleague, House Judiciary Committee Chairman Nadler. I rise today on the floor of the House of Representatives, the People's House, to declare that black girls with our braids, locks, afros, all forms of natural hairstyles, and yes, even our smooth alopecia bald heads belong everywhere. Today, we take an important step towards codifying this fact into law by passing the Crown Act legislation. I'm so proud to co-lead in partnership with Representatives Watson, Coleman, Moore, Lee, and Omar. For too long, black girls have been discriminated against and criminalized for the hair that grows on our heads and the way we move through and show up in this world. In my home state, the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, 2 twin sisters, Deanna and Maya, high school students, were disciplined for showing up with braids. They were given numerous detentions, kicked off the track team, banned from prom solely for their hairstyle. In their own words, these scholars and athletes were judged more for their heritage than their homework. No more. For those sisters and thousands of other students who face discrimination based on their hair, the Crown Act is for you. For recent graduates who fear they must change their hair or cut their locks to secure a job, the Crown Act is for you. For our elders who have faced and fought this racism for generations, the Crown Act is for you. Just yesterday, the Massachusetts State Legislature made history by passing similar legislation. By passing the Crown Act today, we affirm, say it loud, black is beautiful and so is is our hair. Whether you are a student in a classroom, an employee in the workplace, or the next Supreme Court justice or the Speaker pro tem, you deserve to show up as your full self, rocking your crown with your head held high. I urge a yes vote for every person who has been asked to shrink or to apologize simply for the beautiful way with which God made them. I yield back.
Gentleman from New York reserves. Gentleman from Ohio is recognized.
Yeah, Madam Speaker, we reserve.
Gentleman from Ohio reserves. Gentleman from New York is recognized.
Madam Speaker, I now yield 3 minutes to the distinguished gentlelady from Texas, a member of the Judiciary Committee, Ms. Jackson Lee.
Ms. Jackson Lee from Texas is recognized for 3 minutes.
So many years ago, with a bush as big as a bush on my head, an afro, of which I was enormously proud, young, fragile ego, probably not that strong in my frame, someone would say skinny legs and high heels, an early teen, trying to express the pain that I felt, living in a segregated world, but trying to assert the prominence of my community, my race of people, trying to associate belatedly with the foot soldiers and the battering and the insults that they received, trying to come to grips with the assassination of Dr. Martin Luther King, Bobby Kennedy, Malcolm X. I wore this bush, which I had to do extreme things. For the original style, as was done to young girls, is processed. It burned beyond recognition. And I went out with my grandmother, a woman of tradition, and fearful for me, she asked me to go back because she couldn't walk with me with an afro. The reason, of course, was her fear, what an afro signified, what it would do, how I would be harmed. Those were the conflicts and strife that black people went through, trying to come to grips with their identity. My good friend, Mr. Jordan, we never encounter each other because we have mutual respect, as I do for you and you do for Sheila Jackson Lee. We don't really get into it because we know we're the kind of folk that stand down from each other. But I enjoy engaging with you. I enjoy your leadership. And your constituents have every right to be concerned about gas prices. My constituents are concerned about eating, being able to pay their rent. And I believe we can walk and chew gum at the same time. Let's get together about gas prices and paying rent and people eating and having jobs and ending discrimination. Why can't we do that together? Because you have not walked in my skin. You've got to understand what it means when we're talking about a report that has been given. In 2019, the Joy Collective, the Crown Act Coalition, disproportionately burdened by policies black people are and practices in public places, including the workplace, that target, profile, or single them out for their natural hairstyles. The Crown study found that black women's hair is more policed in the workplace.
His time has expired.
Gentlelady, an additional 30 seconds.
Gentlelady is recognized for 30
thereby
seconds.
contributing to the climate of group control. Black women are more likely to receive formal grooming policies. And 80% of black women believe that they had to change their hair to be in the workplace. Just imagine the beauty of these hairstyles. Mr. Jordan, the beauty of these hairstyles. This is what we're talking about. People who are severely discriminated against, young boys, young girls. A little girl in a Catholic school could not wear her hair, had to go home. Or the fabulous Serena, who gives joy to all of us. And yet, these are the locks that she is wearing. Can I get another 15? I thank you for recognizing.
I grant the gentlelady an additional 15 seconds.
I thank you, the chairman, very much. And this young boy, who like me, felt diminished because someone thought it was wrong for me, an afro for him, his braided hair. Mr. Jordan, we have engaged in a lot, but I will not stand down on the Crown Act. We must pass the Crown Act to give dignity and reaffirm the rights of all people. Wear your hair as you desire. I yield
Gentleman
back.
from Ohio is recognized.
Madam Speaker, we reserve.
From Ohio reserves.
Madam Speaker, I now yield 2 minutes.
The gentleman from New York is recognized.
Excuse me. I now yield 2 minutes to the gentlelady from Georgia, Ms. Williams.
Where's she from? Washington. Oh. Gentlelady from Georgia is recognized for 2 minutes.
Madam Speaker, I rise today in support of the Crown Act because all hair is professional hair. While serving in the Georgia State Senate, a colleague greeted me with what she thought was a compliment. After spending most of the legislative session in braids, I had my natural hair pressed straight. She told me, "Nikema, you should keep your hair that way. It looks better, more professional, more like a state senator." Remarks like this are all too familiar for Black women and girls, unacceptable on their own, but the outright discrimination that flows from them is worse. If I didn't work for the people in Congress, I know that I could be fired simply for wearing my hair in braids. Nothing about this is okay. So I make it a point to create an environment where my team feels comfortable wearing their crowns in every texture. Everybody deserves this level of safety, no matter where they work. Our hair is an expression of our authentic selves. Braids, locks, coils, or a silk press, all hair is professional hair. Discrimination has no place in America. That includes discriminating against Black hair. The Crown Act would make race-based hair discrimination a thing of the past once and for all, and that's why we should pass it today. Thank you, Madam Speaker, and I yield back.
Gentleman from New York reserves.
Madam Speaker,
Gentleman from Ohio is recognized.
Yeah, Madam Speaker, we reserve.
Gentleman from Ohio reserves. Gentleman from New York is recognized.
Madam Speaker, we're prepared to close.
Gentleman reserves. Gentleman from Ohio is recognized.
Madam Speaker, for all the reasons we've talked about and what we should be focused on here, I would urge a no vote on the legislation, and I hope my colleagues will do the same. And with that, we yield back the balance of our time.
Gentleman yields back. All time has expired. Gentleman from New York is recognized.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, while racism and discrimination sometimes appear in overt forms, they can also manifest themselves in more subtle ways. One way is through discrimination based on natural hairstyles and hair textures associated with people of a particular race or national origin. This Crown Act would make explicit that the civil rights laws prohibit such discrimination. This is a matter of basic fairness and justice. This bill passed the House last Congress unanimously, and I hope we will do so again today. All the arguments we've heard about everything else are interesting and important, but not relevant to this bill. This bill is purely about discrimination, purely about protecting people from discrimination, and that we ought to pass it. I urge all members to support this important legislation, and I yield back the balance of my time.
All time for debate has expired. Pursuant to House Resolution 979, the previous question is ordered on the bill as amended. The question is on the amendment and on engrossment and third reading of the bill. Those in favor will say aye. Aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes have it. Third reading.
A bill to prohibit discrimination based on an individual's texture or style of hair.
The question is on passage of the bill. Those in favor will say aye. Aye. Those opposed will say no. The ayes have it. Purpose does the gentleman from Ohio seek recognition?
That's for roll call.
Pursuant to Section 3S of House Resolution 8. The yeas and nays are ordered. Members will record their votes by electronic device. Connecticut seek recognition.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, as the member designated by Rosa DeLauro of Connecticut and Jared Golden of Maine, I inform the House that these members will vote yes on H.R. 2116.
Okay. For what purpose does the gentleman from North Carolina rise?
Madam Speaker, as a member designated by Mr. Carter of Texas, I inform the House that Mr. Carter will vote nay on H.R. 2116.
For what purpose does the gentlelady from
Michigan
rise?
Madam Speaker, as a member designated by the amazing Marcy Captor of the Midwest, I inform the House that she will vote yes on H.R. 2116.
For what purpose does the gentleman from Tennessee rise?
Madam Speaker, as the member designated by Ms. Harshbarger of Tennessee, I inform the House that Ms. Harshbarger will vote nay on H.R. 2116.
For what purpose does the gentleman from Florida seek recognition?
Thank you, Madam Speaker. As the member designated by Mr. Waltz of Florida, I inform the House that Mr. Waltz will vote nay on H.R. 2116.
For what purpose does the gentleman from New York rise?
As the member designated by Chairwoman Eddie Bernice Johnson, Chairwoman Lofgren, Representative Clark, and Representative Chantel Brown, I inform the House that these members will vote yea on H.R. 2116.
For what purpose does the gentleman from Rhode Island rise?
Madam Speaker, as the member designated by Ms. Titus of Nevada, the first state to ratify the 15th Amendment, which gives Americans the right to vote, I inform the House that Ms. Titus will vote yes on H.R. 21-186. As the member designated by Ms. Wilson of Florida, birthplace of Ariana Grande, Bob Ross, Sidney Poitier, and Pitbull, I inform the House that Ms. Wilson will vote yes on H.R. 2116. As the member designated by Mr. Larson of Connecticut, known as the Constitution State, I inform the House that Mr. Larson will vote yes on H.R. 2116. And as the member designated by Ms. Dingell of Michigan, the state which has more miles of freshwater shoreline than any other state in the nation, 3,000 to be exact, I inform the House that Ms. Dingell will vote yes on H.R. 2116.
For what purpose does the gentleman from Ohio rise?
Madam Speaker, as the member designated by Mr. Russ Fulcher of Idaho, I inform the House that Mr. Fulcher will vote nay on H.R. 2116.
For what purpose does the gentleman from Indiana rise?
Madam Speaker, as the member designated by Ms. Walorski from Indiana, I inform the House that Ms. Walorski will vote nay on H.R. 2116.
For what purpose does the gentleman from California rise?
Madam Speaker, as member designated by Hank Johnson, Henry Cuellar, and John Garamendi. I inform the House that these members will vote yes on H.R. 2116.
For what purpose does the gentlelady from Florida rise?
Thank you, Madam Speaker. As the member designated by Ms. Wagner of Missouri, I inform the House that Ms. Wagner will vote nay on H.R. 2116.
For what purpose does the gentleman from Texas rise?
Madam Speaker, as a member designated by Mr. Louis Gohmert of the great state of Texas, I inform the House that Mr. Gohmert will vote nay on H.R. 2116.
For what purpose does the gentleman from California rise?
Madam Speaker, as a member designated by Mr. Calvert of California, I inform the House that Mr. Calvert will vote no on H.R. 2116.
For what purpose does this gentlelady from New York rise?
Madam Speaker, as the member designated by Mr. Deutsch of Florida, I inform the House that Mr. Deutsch will vote yes on H.R. 2116.
For what purpose does the gentleman from New York rise?
Madam Speaker, as the member designated by Mr. Garbarino from New York, I inform the House that Mr. Garbarino will vote nay on 2116.
When did you do? For what purpose does the gentleman from Virginia rise?
Madam Speaker, Madam Speaker, is the member designated by Mr. Moulton of Massachusetts, Mr. Swazi of New York, Mr. Trone of Maryland, Mr. Harder of California, Mr. DeSaulnier of California, and Mr. Kind of Wisconsin. I inform the House that these 6 members will vote yes on H.R. 2116.
For what purpose does the gentleman from Florida rise?
Thank you, Madam Speaker. As the member designated by Ms. Salazar of Florida, I inform the House that Ms. Salazar will vote nay on H.R. 2116.
For what purpose does the gentlelady from Illinois rise?
Good morning, Madam Speaker. As the member designated by Congressman Troy Carter, pursuant to H.Res. 8, I inform the House that Mr. Carter will vote yes on H.R. 2116.
For what purpose does the gentleman from Florida rise?
Madam Speaker, as the member designated by Mr. Norman of South Carolina, I inform the House that Mr. Norman will vote no on H.R. 2116.
For what purpose does the gentleman from Illinois rise?
Madam Speaker, as the member designated by Mr. Bowman of New York, I inform the House that he will vote yes on H.R. 2116.
For what purpose does the gentlelady from New York rise?
Madam Speaker, as the member designated by Mr. Van Drew of New Jersey, I inform the House that Mr. Van Drew will vote nay on H.R. 2116.
For what purpose does the gentleman from New York, from California rise?
Madam Speaker, as the member designated by Representative Kim Schreier, I inform the House that Ms. Schreier will vote yes on House Resolution 2116.
For what purpose does the gentlelady from West Virginia rise?
Madam Speaker, as the member designated by Mr. LaHood of Illinois, I inform the House that Mr. LaHood of Illinois will vote no on H.R. 2116.
For what purpose does the gentleman from Pennsylvania rise?
Madam Speaker, as a member designated for the following members, Lawson of Florida, Rush of Illinois, and Doyle of Pennsylvania, they all vote yes on H.R. 2116.
For what purpose does the gentleman from Pennsylvania rise?
Madam Speaker, as a member designated by Representative Lloyd Smucker of Pennsylvania, I inform the House that Mr. Smucker will vote no on H.R. 2116. Thank you.
For what purpose does the gentleman from Colorado rise?
To say hello to the Speaker, and as the member designated by Mr. Joe Neguse of Colorado and Mr. Tim Ryan of Ohio, I inform the House that Mr. Neguse and Mr. Ryan will vote yes on H.R. 2116.
For what purpose does the gentlelady from Florida rise?
Madam Speaker, as the member designated by Mr. Christ of Florida and Ms. Maloney of New York, I inform the House that both members will vote yea on H.R. 2116.
For what purpose does the gentleman from New York rise?
Madam Speaker, as a member designated by my friend Mr. Upton from Michigan, I inform the House that Mr. Upton will vote no on H.R. 2116.
For what purpose does the gentleman from Utah rise?
Thank you, Madam Speaker. As member designated by Mr. Curtis of Utah, I inform the House that Mr. Curtis will vote nay on H.R. 2116.
For what purpose does the gentleman from Michigan rise?
Madam Speaker, as the member designated by Mr. Fortenberry of Nebraska, I inform the House that Mr. Fortenberry will vote no on H.R. 2116.
For what purpose does the gentlelady from West Virginia rise?
Madam Speaker, as the member designated by Ms. Lesko of Arizona, I inform the House that Ms. Lesko of Arizona will vote no on H.R. 2116.
For what purpose does the gentleman from Kentucky rise?
Madam Speaker, as the member designated by Mr. Barr of Kentucky, I inform the House that Mr. Barr will vote nay on H.R. 2116.
For what purpose does the gentleman from Mississippi rise?
Madam Speaker, as the member designated by Mr. LaMalfa, California, I inform the House that Mr. LaMalfa will vote nay on H.R. 2116.
For what purpose does the gentleman from Florida rise?
Madam Speaker, as the member designated by Ms. Kathy McMorris Rogers, I inform the House that Ms. Rogers will vote nay on H.R. 2116.
For what purpose does the gentlelady from Texas rise?
Madam Speaker, as the member designated by Ms. Roybal Allard, I inform the House that Ms. Roybal Allard will vote yes on H.R. 2116.
For what purpose does the gentleman from California rise?
As the member designated by Representatives Cardenas and Swalwell, I inform the House that these members will vote aye on H.R. 2116.
For what purpose does the gentleman from New Jersey rise?
Thank you, Madam Speaker. As the member designated by Mr. Albio Series, Mr. Peter Welch, Ms. Ann Kirkpatrick, Mr. Andy Kim, Mr. Bill Pascrell, Mr. Donald Payne, and Mr. Brian Higgins, I inform the House that these members will vote yes on H.R. 2116.
For what purpose does the gentleman from Texas rise?
Madam Speaker, thank you very much. As the member designated by Mr. Dan Crenshaw, Mr. Van Taylor, Mr. Madison Cawthorn, and Mr. Troy Nels, I'd like to inform the House that all four of these members will be voting nay on H.R. 2116. Thank you very much.
For what purpose does the gentlelady from Virginia rise?
Madam Speaker, as a member designated by members Connolly, Frankel, McEachin, and Porter, I inform the House that these members will vote yes on H.R. 2116.
For what purpose does the gentleman from Alabama rise?
Madam Speaker, as a member designated by Mr. Brooks, I inform the House that Mr. Brooks will vote no on H.R. 2116.
For what purpose does the gentleman from Michigan rise?
Madam Speaker, as the member designated by Mr. Kinzinger of Illinois, I inform the House that Mr. Kinzinger will vote yea on H.R. 2116.
For what purpose does the gentleman from California rise?
Madam Speaker, as the member designated by Michelle Steele of California pursuant to House Resolution 8, I inform the House that Congresswoman Steele will vote no on H.R. 2116.
For what purpose does the gentleman from Minnesota rise?
Madam Speaker, as a member designated by Mr. Bergman of the state of Michigan, I inform the House that Mr. Bergman will vote no on H.R. 2116.
For what purpose does the gentleman from North Carolina rise?
Madam Speaker, I, as a member designated by Mr. McHenry from the great state of North Carolina, I inform the House that Mr. McHenry will vote no on the bill about hair, H.R. 2116.
For what purpose does the gentlelady from Pennsylvania rise?
As the member designated by Ms. Dean, I inform the House that Ms. Dean will vote yes on H.R. 2116.
For what purpose does the gentlelady from California seek recognition?
Speaker, as the member designated by Representative Karen Bass, I inform the House that Representative Bass will vote yes on H.R. 2116.
I beg your pardon, sir. What purpose does the gentleman from Texas rise?
Madam Speaker, as the member designated by Ms. Van Dyne of Texas and pursuant to House Resolution 8, I inform the House that Ms. Van Dyne will vote no on H.R. 2116.
For what purpose does the gentleman from Indiana rise?
As the member designated Mr. Cahaly, I inform the House that Mr. Cahaly will vote yea on 2116.
For what purpose does the gentlelady from Washington rise?
Madam Speaker, as a member designated by Ms. McMorris Rodgers of Washington State, I inform the House that Ms. McMorris Rodgers will vote no on H.R. 2116.
On this vote, The yeas are 235, and the nays are 189, with no one answering present. The Creating a Respectful and Open World for Natural Hair Act is passed. Without objection, a motion to reconsider is laid on the table.
Is this the first thing I read? The House will be in order. The chair will now entertain requests for 1-minute speeches. For what purpose does a gentlewoman from Michigan seek recognition?
Madam Speaker, I ask unanimous consent to address the House for 1 minute and extend and revise my remarks.
Without objection, gentlewoman is recognized for 1 minute.
Madam Speaker, we need to protect the American people from corporate greed and abuse. The FAIR Act is one of those protections. Corporations use forced arbitration clauses to deny Americans their right to seek accountability and justice in disputes with private companies. They literally eliminated any chance a resident may have for justice from a dispute, specifically in the place of employment. From employee handbooks to bank accounts to documents to a college admission paperwork, companies include forced arbitration clauses as the main form of dispute resolution so that they can rig the rules and appoint themselves judge and jury in the arbitration process. Forced arbitration is a private, secretive system without any enforceable standards or legal protections for our residents. There is no public disclosure of proceedings or any requirements for arbitrators to follow the law. So, Madam Speaker, forced arbitration makes it virtually impossible for anti-discrimination laws, disability rights laws, and so many other important laws to be enforced at the federal level. To put it simply, this is unjust and has failed the American public for far too long. Earlier this year, President Biden signed a law ending forced arbitration for cases involving sexual assault and sexual harassment. So I urge the Senate to pass this legislation and send it to the President's desk so that we can protect consumers and workers from corporations that seek to exploit them. Thank you, and I yield back.
Thank you. For what purpose does the gentlewoman from California seek recognition?
I rise today to address the House for 1 minute and to revise and extend my remarks.
Without objection, the gentlewoman is recognized for 1 minute.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Speaker. I rise today to honor the life of Mr. Ralph Ahn, a pioneer in the Korean American community who exemplified the American dream. Ralph was the youngest child of Dosan An Chang-ho, And Ralph joined the United States Navy and bravely served during our country fighting during the World War II. He eventually started acting, following the footsteps of his older brother, Philip Ahn, who was one of the first Asian American actors. Ralph made his film debut as a Korean prisoner in Battered Circus before taking on the roles in Mission Over Korea, Prisoner of War, The Hook, It Takes Two, The Golden Girls, and most recently as Tran on New Girl. I remember last seeing him at an event about a year ago commemorating the Korean American pioneers and Korean independence. While I'm sad that the last generation of the Korean American leaders have passed, I know that their legacy will continue to live on. And I offer my deepest condolences to his beautiful wife, Anne, and his family. With that, I yield back.
For what purpose does the gentlewoman from Minnesota seek recognition?
Madam Speaker, I rise today to remember Shar Knudsen, former president of the Minnesota AFL-CIO who passed away last month. She was a bridge builder.
The gentlelady will suspend. Does the gentlelady ask for unanimous consent to address the House?
Yes, I do. Thank you for that correction, Madam Speaker.
Without objection, the gentlewoman is recognized for 1 minute.
Madam Speaker, I rise today to remember Shar Knudsen, former president of the Minnesota AFL-CIO, who passed away last month. She was a bridge builder, trailblazer, and mentor. Shar was a lifelong advocate for workers in St. Paul and across Minnesota, a trailblazer herself, the first woman to lead the Minnesota AFL-CIO. She mentored women in the labor movement and urged them to run for leadership. She was a strong booster for pro-women labor supporters seeking public office. Her early and steadfast support and encouragement was instrumental in me in helping to run for Congress and advance our common values together. Hosting Shar as my guest for President Obama's first official State of the Union address in Washington, D.C. was a privilege. Madam Speaker, please allow me to enter into the record February 22nd, 2022 article from the Union Advocate newspaper in St. Paul paying tribute to Shar Knudsen's life and work.
Without objection.
I'm thankful for the opportunity to work with Shar Knudsen, to call her a friend. Her presence will be missed. Her legacy lives on. And with that, I yield back, Madam Speaker.
For what purpose does the gentleman from Arkansas seek recognition?
Madam Speaker, I ask unanimous consent to speak for 1 minute and revise and extend my remarks.
Without objection, the gentleman is recognized for 1 minute.
Madam Speaker, thank you. Inflation is a thief, and many of us believe that the Federal Reserve is behind the curve in fighting that thief, inflation. History is repeating itself, Madam Chair, and Jay Powell is now fighting and facing precisely what his predecessor, Arthur Burns, called the anguish of central banking in 1979. Sustained stagflation, high current inflation, growing high inflationary expectations, and now a commodity shock. These are all the problems that Chair Burns faced in the 1970s. And while I welcome the Fed's action to shrink the balance sheet and start with a 25 basis point increase in short-term rate targets, this process should have started in 2020. And in my view, they should have been more aggressive this week and supported a 50 basis increase in short-term rates. It's time for Congress to reassess and debate the central bank's mandate. In my view, the Fed should have a single mandate focused on containing inflation and keeping prices in check for Americans at the pump, at the grocery store, and whenever they pull out their wallet. Thank you, and I yield back the balance of my time.
For what purpose does the gentleman from Illinois seek recognition?
Madam Speaker, I seek unanimous consent to revise and extend my remarks.
Without objection, the gentleman is recognized for 1 minute.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I rise today to celebrate the passage of this year's omnibus spending bill and to express my excitement for the community project funding the 4th District of Illinois will receive. These crucial funds, totaling over $10 million, will expand affordable housing, improve access to health care, support violence prevention and counseling, and even build an enclosure around a community swimming pool, an absolute must-have in the Windy City. Working-class immigrant neighborhoods like mine have never gotten that kind of investment and resources that other neighborhoods have. I started as an activist to change that, to bring resources to my community, and I'm proud to announce that this vital funding package will transform countless lives. I yield back.
For what purpose does a gentlewoman from Minnesota seek recognition?
Madam Speaker, I ask unanimous consent to address the House for 1 minute and revise and extend my remarks.
Without objection, the gentlewoman is recognized for 1 minute.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I rise today to recognize Todd and Louise Maleka, the 2022 winners of the Farm Journal's Top Producer of the Year Award. Located in the heart of Minnesota's 7th District in Villard, Minnesota, Maleka Enterprises is a multi-generational, family-run dairy, pumping, and custom work operation. Both Todd and Louise grew up on dairy farms, and now 5 of their 7 children are in the family business. Louise loves being able to see the next generation getting involved and taking up the reins. Their company values include integrity, trust, and a commitment to constant and never-ending improvement. With values like that, it's no wonder they receive such a prestigious award. Congratulations to the Malekas for this impressive achievement. And Madam Speaker, I yield back.
Thank you. For what purpose does a gentlewoman from Georgia seek recognition?
I ask unanimous consent to address the House for 1 minute and revise and extend my remarks.
Without objection, the gentlewoman is recognized for 1 minute.
I rise today to commemorate the 1-year anniversary of the Atlanta spa shooting. Across our country, the Asian American community has been under attack because of misinformation and xenophobia that wrongly blame them for the COVID-19 pandemic. On March 16, 2021, 1 year ago in Atlanta, 8 innocent people, 6 of whom were women of Asian descent, were senselessly murdered. The victims of this attack included mothers and grandmothers, fathers and sons, teachers and veterans. These are lives that cannot be restored, leaving pain that cannot be forgotten. These attacks in Georgia were a wake-up call for the public to the reality of anti-American hate and what the Asian American community is facing each and every day. Acts of violence like these demonstrate why we must always call out bigotry and hate whenever or wherever we see it. We must all speak out against it. I would like to thank KPAC Chair Judy Chu for her leadership on this issue and encourage my colleagues to continue to speak out as we stand together with the Asian American community. Thank you, and I yield back.
For what purpose does a gentleman from Tennessee seek recognition?
I ask unanimous consent to address the House for 1 minute and to revise and extend my remarks.
Without objection, the gentleman is recognized for 1 minute.
Madam Speaker, the Biden administration has a backup plan to address rising gas prices. If their Secretary of Transportation's comical recommendation for every American to buy an electric car doesn't pan out. Unfortunately, the plan includes secret talks with Venezuela, led by corrupt dictator Nicolas Maduro, about lifting sanctions on importing Venezuelan oil into the United States. And of course, if that doesn't work out, there is always Saudi Arabia and the Organization of Petroleum Exporting Countries, otherwise known as OPEC. Because surely begging an oil cartel to make a deal to increase oil production could never go wrong. What's next? Buying oil from Iran, the world's leading exporter of terrorism? This begs the question, is this all that the Biden administration has to offer the American people in a time of crisis? Buy oil from corrupt dictators or buy a costly electric vehicle that you can't afford? These are not the ideals on which America was built, but regrettably, this is President Biden's America. I yield back.
For what purpose does the gentleman from California seek recognition?
Yes, Madam Speaker, I ask 1 minute to address the House with unanimous consent.
Without objection, the gentleman is recognized for 1 minute.
Madam Speaker, Vladimir Putin attempts to drape the Iron Curtain over Russia once again. I stress the importance of working together with our European allies to support Ukraine's sovereignty and democracies around the world. Make no mistake about it, this is the test of our time. As a co-chair of the Transatlantic Legislators Dialogue, I work closely with my European co-chair, Radek Sikorski. Congress and the European Parliament have taken steps to deal with this pariah Putin. Congress has passed $13.6 billion last week for Ukraine and to support humanitarian aid, military assistance, and economic resolve. American allies such as Poland and other European countries are doing a great deal to deal with the refugee problem. President Biden separately provided an additional $800 million for Stinger missiles and other anti-aircraft, anti-armor weapons to help the valiant, brave Ukrainians. Members of the European Parliament have also done their part with another $500 million in assistance. NATO today is stronger than at any time since the Cold War, but there is much more work ahead of us. We must continue to unite the front of Vladimir Putin with our European allies. As President Zelensky reminded us,
time is expired.
The cost of freedom is not free. Thank you.
Thank you. For what purpose does the gentleman from California seek recognition?
Madam Speaker, I request unanimous consent to address the House for 1 minute and to revise and extend my remarks.
Without objection, the gentleman is recognized for 1 minute.
Madam Speaker, several weeks ago, we witnessed a very unfortunate milestone, the 80th anniversary of the signature of an executive order by the President of the United States to incarcerate over 100,000 Japanese Americans during World War II. This was a direct violation of the founding principles of our country that say that no one should be deprived of their liberty without just cause. That's why I was so proud to see this body pass my bill, H.R. 6434, this week, that would create a historic network of sites linked to the incarceration of Japanese Americans during World War II. Madam Speaker, the power of history is to gain perspective and learn from the mistakes of the past, and I'm in hopes that this network will call attention to this unjust imprisonment and ensure that this injustice never occurs in the United States again. I yield back.
For what purpose does the gentleman from New Jersey seek recognition, from California seek recognition?
To address the House I request to address the House for 1 minute.
Without objection, the gentleman is recognized for 1 minute.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Democrats are building a better America for the people. Last year, we passed the American Rescue Plan that has helped to create 7.4 million jobs in 13 months, the most in U.S. history. Under the Biden administration, wages are up, jobs are up, and unemployment is down. What are Republicans doing? I don't know, but I do know that 2 of them attended a white nationalist conference last month. And let me now tell you all the actions that House Republican leadership took against these 2 Republican members who attended and spoke at a white nationalist conference last month. I yield back.
For what purpose does a gentlewoman from California seek recognition?
Madam Speaker, I ask unanimous consent to address the House for 1 minute.
Without objection, the gentlewoman is recognized for 1 minute.
Madam Speaker, Congressman Vargas and I rise today to celebrate the incredible life of Francine Mailligue and the indelible mark she left on San Diego. Francine was an artist and an advocate, a journalist, a motivational speaker, and, as so many in San Diego knew her, a public servant. As district director in the California State Assembly, Francine made sure that San Diegans had equitable access to the resources they needed and deserved. Even after her cancer diagnosis in 2019, Francine kept working to serve our community while also becoming a powerful advocate for cancer research. Francine was a proud advocate for San Diego's Filipino and Asian American communities. She served as the president of the Filipino American Chamber of Commerce of San Diego County and proudly highlighted the Filipino experience across the country and around the world. Last month, Francine passed away after her battle with cancer. Congressman Vargas and I join so many from across San Diego in sending our condolences to Francine's family, friends, and loved ones. May her memory be a blessing. I yield back.
For what purpose does a gentleman from Alabama seek recognition?
Madam Speaker, I request permission to address the House for 1 minute.
Without objection, the gentleman is recognized for 1 minute.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I've been asked many times this week about my thoughts on the address to Congress by President of Ukraine, Vladimir Zelensky. I was moved and inspired by his commitment to the defense of his stricken nation and its besieged people. President Zelensky's remarks reminded me of another time when a courageous and determined leader sought the aid of America in defense of his nation as it was being threatened by the armed might of Hitler's Nazi forces. On February 9, 1941, Winston Churchill addressed the British Parliament with a speech that was broadcast by the BBC. Churchill spoke to Parliament, but he was really speaking to the United States, and in particular to President Franklin Delano Roosevelt. At the end of that speech, Churchill said this: "Put your confidence in us. Give us your faith and your blessing, and under providence, all will be well." He concluded his message to Parliament and to America by saying, "Give us the tools, and we will finish the job." That is what I heard President Zelensky saying to Congress of the United States. Madam Speaker, it is time to listen to the people who are face to face with the enemy fighting for their country. They know better. May I extend it 10 seconds?
Chair cannot entertain that request.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I yield back.
For what purpose does a gentlewoman from Texas seek recognition?
To address the House for 1 minute and revise and extend my remarks.
Without objection, the gentlewoman is recognized for 1 minute.
As President Zelensky said, we are the leaders of peace. The President is the leader of world peace. Thank you, President Biden, for recognizing the crisis and the murder and pillage and slaughter of babies in Ukraine. Let us continue to stand together, but I am fighting for as much to be able to solve the Ukraine crisis as I am for peace. Let me also acknowledge this past week the remembering of those who were killed in Atlanta that exhibited the worst kind of Asian hate. Let us stand together against such hate and stand together for what is right. Let me also mention the fighters at the Pleasantville Village senior citizen housing. They have been fighting against eviction, against disrespect, and against the complete altering of their living quarters. They determine, and they should have, quality of life housing. I'm asking the new owner to stand down and to allow this housing project or this housing facility to be for seniors in their later lives so they can have a better quality of life. I will continue to fight to ensure that they have a place to live that is safe and best for them. I yield back.
For what purpose does the gentleman from New Jersey seek recognition?
Madam Speaker, I ask unanimous consent to address the House for 1 minute.
Without objection, the gentleman is recognized for 1 minute.
Madam Speaker, from war in Europe to pandemic around the world to potential crisis in Asia, one of the lessons we are learning is that America should never be dependent on strategic adversaries like China or Russia for the goods most critical to our economic and national security, whether it's PPE or pharmaceutical ingredients or microchips or the advanced battery technologies that will power the future. We must bring our supply chains home. We can do this by enacting into law the bipartisan supply chain resiliency provisions in the America Competes Act. This section of the bill, which I helped write, makes one of the biggest investments to spur domestic manufacturing in our nation's history. It's been endorsed by the National Association of Manufacturers, the United Steelworkers, the National Defense Industry Association, more than 20 organizations, and the list is growing each day. I urge that any competitiveness bill that goes to the President for his signature include these important provisions in the America Competes Act. Thank you, and I yield back.
For what purposes does the gentleman from Missouri seek recognition?
For 1 minute.
Without objection, the gentleman is recognized for 1 minute.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Last Friday marked the one-year anniversary of the Biden bailout bill. This $2 trillion package has directly led to worker shortages, billions in waste, and the worst inflation in 40 years. The Biden bailout didn't rescue our economy. It ruined a recovery that was already underway. $500 billion spent to incentivize business closures, lockdowns, and anti-science masking policies. Billions wasted, misused, or repurposed for projects unrelated to the pandemic. Florida golf courses, checks for prisoners and Japanese citizens, trees for New York, libraries in the president's home state. The list goes on. And as a result, American families are finding it harder to put food on their table, clothes on their backs, and gasoline in their car. President Biden sold the American people a COVID package that spent less than 9% for fighting COVID. He created a massive worker shortage and instigated the highest inflation in a generation. That's his legacy.
For what purposes does the gentlewoman from Washington seek recognition?
Madam Speaker, I ask unanimous consent to address the House for 1 minute and to revise and extend my remarks.
Without objection, the gentlewoman is recognized for 1 minute.
Thank you. I rise today as a member of the Washington State delegation to honor the service and sacrifice of Pierce County Sheriff Deputy Dom Collada. He was killed in the line of duty after pursuing a man wanted for second-degree assault. I've been told that he had a tireless work ethic and was someone who went above and beyond his commitment to our community and to our nation. In addition to his role as a deputy, he was also in the National Guard and previously served in the U.S. Army. But he and his family's commitment to the community doesn't stop there. He was also an organ donor. It is just one more way that he and his family have stepped up to support others in need. He is nothing short of a hero. His loss is a devastating blow to our community, and I'm thinking and praying for the Pierce County Sheriff's Office, Dom's family, friends, and loved ones. I hope all of us in this House will take a moment to remember Deputy Collada and his contributions to our community and to our nation. Thank you, Madam Speaker. I yield back.
Under the Speaker's announced policy of January 4th, 2021, the gentleman from Wisconsin, Mr. Gothman, is recognized for 60 minutes as the designee of the Minority Leader.
Thank you. I'd like to comment a little bit on some of the issues that have been out there this week.